What's up? Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody is doing fan-freaking-tastic today. We had an awesome episode yesterday all about the Ethereum fork, and today is going to be even better than yesterday's show. We have a PulseX update from Richard Hart on what a new feature is going to be on PulseX when it launches. We have some treasure news. What if there was a way to get anonymity? That's a fancy word for saying privacy, right? What if there was what if there was an easy, simple way where you didn't have to opt in for privacy? You could get privacy automatically. Well, Treasure, right, the hardware tool, is going to allow this to take place in the future with a partnership with Wasabi. We're going to get into that. We also, somebody was asking about how do you value an HSI NFT, right? Like how do you go through and value that? Because if you take your hex and you were to stake this through Hedron, there's three options you have for disposition. You could take your HSI, convert it to an NFT and sell it on OpenSea. You could take your HSI and sell it to the ICOSA contract. You could take your HSI and borrow your advanceable Hedron, right? Bullish, we should create a tool for this now that I'm actually thinking about this because nobody else is doing this, but this is the calculation that people have to go through in their minds. So we should make this easier because this would be a net benefit to the marketplace. But in that disposition, NFT, OpenSea, ICOSA, and the advanceable Hedron, those are three different ways that you can dispose of your HSI or create liquidity for your HSI position. Now, how do you think people are going to go about doing this? Yes, let's definitely create this. What are the three prices? If the HSI as a NFT is the highest price, then more people are going to do that. If, however, what I believe is going to happen, Hedron price is going to accelerate so that the Hedron is actually going to provide the best value, meaning you have these three options to dispose of your HSI and gain liquidity. This option is probably going to provide you the best money, the most amount of dollars in your account, right? So that means why would anybody use NFTs? Why would anybody use ICOSA to dispose of their position? But let's take a deeper dive into the valuation of the NFT. How, if you see OpenSea NFTs for hex, right? HSIs. How can you understand if that's a good value? Like, what is the framework? How can you go about and think about like, this is one T share, and they're selling it for this much. Does it make sense? Like, is that like a good investment, or would it be better to go through and buy it just in the marketplace? All right, so we're going to run through an example of that. So we've got a bunch of awesome stuff to cover in today's show. A little bit of I don't know what they say, laundry cleaning or something or whatever it is, but GRC is out today. Bullish is in the house. So let's get a bicep. Look at those biceps, those fucking juicy. For Bullish and the help in the background, we'll say hi to PD C. I am number one. You are number one. Everybody should think that they're number one, but also have the capacity to be able to realize that other people know things that they don't, and they're allowed to grow. Jaden, I love the name. Hexkin Tattooer, what's Gucci? Derek, Boyd, what's up? Good morning. Good morning. We have a Hexkin in the house in my area, which maybe we're doing a collaboration, but definitely doing a meetup at some point. Bugs, good morning, sir. How are you? Tyrannosaurus Hex, love your name. New Mind, I like that as well. AJ, great to see you. 3 days in a row, man. I love it. Nikola Tesla, I love Tesla. Matt, how are you doing? Green Day Power, the crypto show. I love Stolt. I love you too. You're awesome. I appreciate you guys. Gianni, please destroyed that. RH is live now. Sam, bullish, is RH live? Should we save this show for tomorrow and cover the RH live? If you let me know in the chat, bullish, or if anybody else has the info. He was live yesterday, but I don't know if he's still live today. So bullish, if he is, if you want to pull that up, we can cover that and then save some of this juiciness for tomorrow. UFO, good morning. Hex Banger, Chad Donnerschwantz, good morning. Best channel all over crypto. If you guys are not subscribed to my channel, right, you should definitely subscribe to my channel. It's just Stolt. Cover a lot of this shit. I also do some solo shows, or also on GRC's channel. Press the subscribe button. There's a little bell notification. You should definitely press both of those buttons. RH Live is a replay from last night. Okay, cool. I can give you a quick update on that too. We'll do that with the PulseX update as soon as we play the intro in a moment. So thank you for that. I just finished listening to that. Wasn't super impressed, but there is an update on Pulse as well as PulseX that we're going to get into. Getting Hedron up front through an HSI sounds like a huge chance to cash in on one's HSI from the moment you dispose of it. We'll get into that because I think that there's a massive opportunity where people don't realize how early we are in this game. AJ, Luna, Pulse Chain, Par Excellence, Nicola Reed. How are you, Nicola Tesla, Mr. Profit? Good morning. Over in Clearwater, Tampa area, sir. Sam, a deep dive in swapping HSIs for Hedron up front is highly valuable strategy. I want more info. Let's dive into that valuation. But first, we are going to get into some DeFi proof and get the show started in 1 minute and 9 seconds. Peace.
You already know what time it is. You already know what time it is. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Waiting on phone. Crypto in the morning. 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 Waiting on phone. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Smoking no blunt on my way to the gym. 11 a.m. and I'm already tuned in. Got me some hex and I'm making a stake. Got me some hedron, I'm making it rain. Pay me some maxi and that's just in case. Jim Reddit sent me to show you the way. Crypto in the morning. 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 Crypto in the morning.
So I hope everybody has had an awesome week. This week has been fantastic for me. Got a lot of stuff going on in my personal life. So let's just dive right into this. I just came back from the gym, right? And I was listening to the RH stream yesterday. If somebody wants to drop the link in the chat here, we can pull it up, but I think it was on KSB TV's YouTube channel where it went on for about an hour. And it wasn't just him pontificating about how fucking awesome he thinks he is, right? It was a little bit more of Q&A and some other stuff in there as well. A little bit of updates related to PulseX and Pulse Chain. So one of the things that I'm just going to rattle off some of the notes I have here. One of the big updates, well, basically the only update that I could find in that is that Pulse Chain, the thing that they're currently working on is some bug fixes, right? They believe that there is some bugs in BSC that were also going to be in Pulse Chain, and those are getting fixed. There is an update or a solution that they're trying to work on for the consensus mechanism on Pulse Chain. Did not get into any of the details on that. I'm not sure how that is actually working or what the dealio is with that. We have the merge taking place pretty soon. We have the fork of the merge too. So we kind of get a preview of what, assuming that's going to go through, there's a test net, there's already a bridge. So we get a preview of what Pulse Chain is going to be with a bunch of free tokens already. Now, what else? A wallet update, right? Didn't give much of a update on the wallet other than he does have somebody working on the wallet. One of his primary concern with the wallet is privacy, right? So not talking about any cool new features or anything like that. Surely there will be some, but he's not talking about any of those features yet. Also, when asked about connecting the wallet with the incentive token to try to make the incentive token better, effectively, Richard Hart went on to say that he doesn't really give a shit that much about the incentive token. And instead of, say, tying the incentive token, which for those of you who are new or don't know what the incentive token is, right? If you go through and you provide liquidity on, say, PancakeSwap, you get cake, right? But you also get the incentive or you get like those incentive tokens, right? Well, you're going to get the same type of thing. I think the PRC or there's a name that people have been calling this incentive token on PulseX. And instead of creating more of an incentive with the wallet for the incentive token, he was like, why wouldn't I just do that with, say, Hex or PulseX or Pulse Chain, right? You can't change stuff with Hex because the code's finished. But if there's an opportunity to make it better for the ecosystem, why wouldn't I just make it better for the tokens that I care more about, was effectively the gist of what he was saying, right? So there's probably going to be some very interesting stuff taking place when this wallet launches. I think in my opinion, I think a better option, instead of charging like MetaMask does, right? Because you're already getting paid on this, right? Like, I think that reducing fees is going to drive more adoption, right? Making a better thing, right? Making the better product or service related to this is going to be more valuable than trying to charge extra fees like MetaMask does. Now, what I mean by this is like having a wallet that is integrated with PulseX, so that, because Richard Hart's already getting paid on the fees on PulseX, right? He's already getting fees on that's going to his account, right? Well, if you add that to MetaMask, that's just another the Richard Hart MetaMask, whatever that's going to be, right? Then that's just another thing that's draining other people's pockets and putting money into his pockets. He does seem pretty egotistical, so I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case. However, I personally think having zero fees and just having them be PulseX fees to do exchanges on the wallet would be thank you, AJ, PRT token. Thank you. I appreciate that on the testnet. Having a wallet that allows you to swap using a DEX without any extra fees, that seems like a pretty novel, awesome thing to incorporate it into a wallet. And incorporating something like what is happening with Treasure, right? Treasure announced that they're going to be launching this, where you have the hardware wallet that incorporates anonymity or privacy. We're going to watch a little video on that in a moment before we get into the valuation of the NFTs for HSIs. Another update was, I think I just saw somebody mention it in here, maybe it was UFO to go, related to leverage trading. Somebody did come on and ask Richard Hart about leverage trading and what things he might do differently. Now, he didn't get into a ton of details, but one of the things that he did say was that when you look at some of the leverage trading platforms today, the way that they're structured, makes it so that it increases volatility. And one example that he referenced was, if I have leverage and I am getting close to liquidation, or say I have a large position and part of one of the positions is going to be liquidated, what they would do is sell the entirety of it instead of just selling a portion of it, which then increases volatility of the system, which according to him, because I haven't looked further into this, so I don't know if this is accurate or not, but the volatility is basically what they're going to be getting paid on those platforms, right? The people who are behind the platforms. So doing something different around the incentives or how it would be structured, so there'd be a scaling associated with leverage so that you wreck less people, right, from using leverage in crypto. So there wasn't a terribly big thing on there. He seems more guarded around ideas and doesn't want to, he thinks it's probably a bad thing to talk about ideas and thinks other people are going to steal them, which I don't necessarily agree with, but that's their prerogative. There's a lot of people in business that do that kind of thing, and there's a lot of people in business that are very open about certain things, but that's how he seemed to come across on that a little bit. The update in terms of features, though, was that Pulse X is going to have limit orders. So that is awesome. If you don't know what a limit order is, Matcha XYZ has the capacity to put in limit orders, although I've never been able to actually get it work because I think you need to use wrapped ETH or something like that. I mainly just use Uniswap, but you can put in a limit order, which allows you to set the price at which you want to buy something. So say, for example, you have an individual that has a belief that Hex is going to do well and they want to acquire more Hex. So what they've been doing is dollar cost averaging into, we should do a video on dollar cost averaging because I don't think a lot of people understand the math on how that actually works at some point, but they're dollar cost averaging into Hex. One way to lower the average price at which somebody pays is you can use your limit orders. And say Hex is at 4 cents right now. You could set up a limit order on Matcha that sits there for 1 week, an entire week, right? Now, when you do this, the limit order is not going to execute until it hits that price. So say if it's Hex is 4 cents, what you could do is set up a limit order to purchase Hex at 3.5 cents or 3.75 cents, right? And this way you get to only execute your trade at that price, right? You get to execute your trade at a lower price than what is currently trading in the market. And if you ever look at, say, some of the charts or a while back, 4 months ago, there was wicks of Hex price that I think went down to like 2.9, right? 2.9 cents, right? So wouldn't you, if you had that belief that you think Hex is going to go up and you think that you would like to acquire more Hex, then wouldn't you have liked to purchase it at 2.9 cents? Well, using a limit order allows you to do that. And that's going to be a new feature that I have never heard about, right? I don't think anybody else has. If you have, let me know in the comments with Pulse X. So that's super exciting. What I personally would love to see with Pulse X is range orders, right? The capacity for a limited liquidity provider to pick a range, right? One of the ways to think about what a range is, let's see here, UFO. I'm just whenever I go back and forth, I always get distracted by the chat here. UFO limit orders are great for buying wick dips correctly. Okay, perfect, exactly. So people who want to acquire things, you can just set up limit orders. Wait a week. If it gets executed, perfect. Then you can set up your next DCA, right? So that you get to buy below the cost. So think about this. If you're like, say if somebody's DCAing $100 a week, right? And they're like, well, then I have to pay a $5 gas fee, plus I have to pay the 0.3% fee for Uniswap, right? Well, if you had a limit order, you could effectively try to get it so that you're getting a low enough cost on Hex that you get the same cost you would if you just did a market order because you're buying at a lower average price. So you can get more hacks when you include the fees for Uniswap and the fees for Ethereum. Great way to actually open positions or close positions. Now, I'd love to see range orders, and I would love to see range for liquidity providers on PulseX. However, the only DEX that currently has this, unless I'm not aware of it, is Uniswap V3. And then when they created this in May of, I think it was 2021, they put a license on this that expires in 2 years. So if, hypothetically, PulseX and Pulse Chain launch next May, and it sounds like they're going to launch next year in terms of like when Richard Hart in the video I watched yesterday, one of the things he was talking about after talking about where the current like kind of state of the market is relating to like Grayscale and some other things. You mentioned, so let's take a look in terms of a thought experiment, what's going on next year, right? 2023. And then he mentions Pulse Chain and PulseX, right? So I personally think that Pulse Chain and PulseX are going to be ready to launch next year, or possibly sooner, but I don't think it's going to. I think they're going to probably launch next year. Now, the point of that is if Pulse Chain and PulseX launch after May of next year, the license for Uniswap V3 will be open source, meaning the team could grab the code or license it. I'm not sure how that would be, but it'll be open to use on PulseX, so that PulseX could have the range capacity for liquidity providers. Meaning, one way to think about creating a concentrated position on Uniswap is if you have one of those like festival boxing gloves, those gloves that are gigantic, it's like a Hulk hand, but it's mammoth, it's got all this padding and stuff inside of it. Well, if I have one of those on and I punch you, it's not going to be that bad, right? Because it's got all this padding in there. It's like a giant airbag, so to speak, so that it takes out a lot of that blow. Well, that's like providing liquidity on PulseX. That's like providing liquidity on any other DEX, right? Including PancakeSwap. You're providing liquidity with this giant boxing glove. So you're not earning a shitload of fees. You're earning fees, and you're earning more fees than you would and making a higher return than you would in Legacy. But it's really, really spread out. Now, concentrated liquidity, this is why I want this with PulseX, is because if you have concentrated liquidity, that's like me taking that glove off and me punching you like that. It's going to hurt a lot more than with this giant padded glove. So when you have concentrated liquidity, you can earn massively higher returns. It makes the market more efficient because then you have more liquidity where the market price is, and it allows for range orders. So it's a very innovative thing that I think would be massively helpful to attract more capital to PulseX. Because when you think about the success of these platforms, it's about adoption and users, right? Well, even if PulseX launches, and if I can earn higher returns than Uniswap providing liquidity, you think I'm going to go to PulseX or Uniswap? I'm going to go to Uniswap. Fees, I can earn more fees. Why would I go over to PulseX, right? So I would love this to be on PulseX. But that is enough in regards to the update related to Richard Hart's talk and Pulse Chain and PulseX. It is extremely stormy outside right now, so hopefully the audio is good here. We're going to get into Treasure and the privacy that you could actually get on your Treasure. We're going to pull up a video. But first, we're going to get into an article. And then in a few minutes after that, how would you like to know if you could look at what is taking place on OpenSea and understand if those NFTs for your HSIs on OpenSea were a good deal or not a good deal, right? We're going to get into that in a moment. First, let's pull up the article on the Treasure and Wasabi partnership. So Wasabi is a wallet that is primarily used for Bitcoin, right? This came out yesterday, I think this was. Yeah, actually, this is today, September 8th. So breaking news. I should have music here, right? Treasure and Wasabi to implement a coin join mixing scheme into hardware wallets. This is awesome. This week, the hardware wallet manufacturer Treasure and the non-custodial Bitcoin wallet with a built-in coin join mixer, Wasabi, revealed the two teams are working together to introduce coin join mixing into hardware wallets. On Sunday, Wasabi tweeted, hardware wallet coin joins are coming next year with our friends Treasure. So this is exciting, but then it gives us the question, what is coin join? How does all this work? So I found this video here that we're going to run through where he actually goes through and describes this. This is related to Bitcoin because that's what Wasabi developed this coin join, the anonymity for Bitcoin, right? And this dude goes through and has an example of this, but it's going to effectively show us how this would work. Think about this. What if you didn't have to use Tornado Cash to give yourself privacy? Because you're using Treasure hardware, which provides you privacy to start with, so that you don't have to cover up effectively your bank statement, right? Because what is crypto going to be in the future? This is going to be where the vast majority of transactions happen. And if everybody gets to see what everybody else is doing, I don't even if you're like straight up and up, like, I don't still want everybody to see. Well, I don't want you fuckers to see where I'm sending all my money. Period. Right? So there's certain transactions that are be like, okay, cool. I would rather not have these be public knowledge of exactly what I'm doing, right? And so having something like this would be super valuable to the ecosystem of crypto overall. So without further ado, let's get into this video, and then we're going to touch on some comments.
Hey everyone. Is using various implementation tutorial first, and Bob has a 1 Bitcoin UTXO in his wallet and wants to send 0.5 Bitcoin to another user on the network. In a normal transaction, Bob would create his own transaction with his wallet that would send a new 0.5 Bitcoin output owned by the receiving address and another 0.5 Bitcoin UTXO that goes back to his wallet as change. Now, this simple example is omitting minor fees, but that's something that also occurs as part of the transaction. So with all of these transactions that are generally done between from one user's wallet to maybe multiple other users' wallets, it's very easy for chain analysis to be done to track the flow of coins. So coin joins can be used to help obscure the flow of funds between users and make it less possible to track who is sending what. So what coin joins do is they combine many users' inputs and outputs into one gigantic transaction with many equally sized outputs. And when I say equally sized, I mean equally sized in value. So for example, a coin join transaction might have many outputs of 0.5 BTC. This makes it difficult to trace the flow of coins between users because you can't distinguish between all of these different outputs in the same transaction that have equal value. So let's look at a simple example of a coin join transaction. In this case, maybe Bob has his 1 BTC UTXO, and he's going to consume that entirely and shuffle his coins in this coin join transaction and get back to 0.5 BTC coins back to his new addresses. Another user has a 0.5 BTC input and simply shuffles that 0.5 BTC back. And we have a third user in this case that's actually sending that 0.5 BTC to another receiver. But you'll notice for all of these users, they have a few different sized inputs, but the transaction produces 4 outputs of 0.5 BTC. And for someone doing blockchain analysis, then it becomes very difficult to tell what coins are going where over these different transactions that will occur with these outputs later. Now, there are some concerns with coin join that are important for making sure that this algorithm works well. And there are many other points that I'm also not going to make in this tutorial. This is a fairly complex topic, and it's very important that coin joins are done correctly by users in order to preserve their privacy. But one concern is you generally want to avoid change. So it's best when you're doing a coin join transaction to consume an entire UTXO to then send to a receiver or potentially shuffle back to yourself as part of these many equally sized outputs. When you have normal change that is distinguishable because you, for example, sent 0.5 BTC and then had a quarter BTC come back.
So one thing that wasn't defined in this video, it's similar-ish in some ways to say how Tornado Cash works. Like completely different, but it's similar in terms of like the same amounts coming in and same amounts going out, going to different places, right? And providing anonymity in that fashion. I think this is how either at the wallet standpoint place or at a blockchain like Pulse Chain should have anonymity built into it, right? Where you can just check a box or something and send shit to a different address, or I don't know exactly, but it should be implemented across the board, not be something that you have to opt into for privacy here. I wanted to touch on a couple of these comments real quick. UFO, what's scoop? Thank you. The code be updated to V3? Can the code be updated to V3 after launch? Remember, PulseSec only needs one side of liquidity due to POC's airdrop will attract massive liquidity. Hopefully, right? Hopefully that is accurate, right? Hopefully there's going to be enough adoption so that people do that. Because what's the other thing people will do, right? People are going to be like, oh, cool, I just got some free shit. Let's just dump that shit and get rid of it, right? And if you look at a concentrated liquidity with Uniswap versus the liquidity that is not concentrated, and even if you cut that by 50%, concentrated liquidity can still beat that easily. We can get into a more in-depth example of this, but effectively, somebody could have, say, 100 grand worth of crypto, and then PulseX launches and they're like, oh, cool, I got copies of all my shit on the other side, right? So then they come in and they take their 100 grand and they start providing liquidity on PulseX, right? Where I could take the 100 grand on Uniswap and multiply the X's in terms of the returns that I would get versus PulseX. Obviously, there could be anomalies right there, but like the magnitude of the effect you can get from concentrated liquidity is just you can't fucking it's just not going to happen if you just get free coins. It's like it just doesn't happen. Like I can make $5,000 look like it's 100 grand, right? You could put like $5 grand and maybe get the same returns as $100,000 who's spreading it over the whole entire range of possibilities where they don't earn fees in. But appreciate the comment and thoughts there. Treasury development is great for privacy, but will the wrath of the United States securities upon them and users? Well, Luna mentions this, and I think this is a super valuable point, Luna. Thank you for bringing this up. I think Luna is Treasure is I believe, Czech Republic company, or at least I think that's where it's out of. I think this is a good thing to not have it located in the United States. When we look at like the preview of what's happening with Pulse Chain in terms of Ethereum fork, right? We're going to have an Ethereum fork for the proof of work, ETHW. So you're already going to get a free copy of all your shit with ETHW. And one of the issues with proof of stake is that when you look at Ethereum proof of stake, the merge, how is the network going to be protected, so to speak, from validators, right? Validators are going to be the ones that are validating all transactions. And what happens when you have a concentration of validators and you're like, oh, well, you don't have that, right? There's lots of people that can validate. All you need is 32 ETH. Cool, I understand that. But what happens when a lot of the validators with 32 ETH all reside in one country called the United States, right? I think the number is around 65%. So if you have Ethereum proof of stake launches with 65% of the world's validators on it. And then when you put this into a bigger view here, you have Canada, the UK, the EU, and Australia, right? Westernized countries that all think of themselves as independent, but all work like in conjunction with each other. So you think that the United States is not going to utilize that all of the validators, or the majority of the validators for Ethereum, are located in the United States to control the network? I think that's naive if that's the case. And then if you think that's not possible because there's still 45% of the network that is outside of the United States, when you zoom out and you realize that the UK, Canada, Australia, and the EU are going to do the same fucking shit the United States does. These countries are all working together effectively to fuck over their citizens, right? In one way, shape, or form. And if the United States uses validators as a way to regulate crypto, then Canada is going to do the same thing. UK is going to do the same thing. EU is going to do the same thing. Australia for sure is going to do that, right? They're going to put you in jail if you're using crypto, right? Over there. So I think there's a very good reason for Ethereum proof of work. And I think that having treasure outside of the United States, as Luna puts it, is a very good thing, right? The last time I checked, if it was accurate, the treasure is in the Czech Republic. Czech Republic was not in the EU. It could be now, or it was partially in it, but they were using their own currency or something, which maybe gives it more anonymity. I'm not exactly sure. Unsuitable. Yes. Effectively a mixer built into it. CoinJoin is coming to Treasure. Oh yes, this is going to be great. AJ, thank you, sir. Privacy at the hardware wallet level. I think this should be across the board. There should be something implemented across the board at the wallet level. Like this should be an option that you should have to opt out of privacy. Privacy should be something that's just automatic. Like you're using this wallet, you get privacy, period, no matter what. You don't have to like opt into the privacy. And if you look at human nature, like the psychology or people's behaviors, you have people who stick with the status quo. That's the term or phrase that people use in psychology to describe this thing that people do. If there is this path that does something, if there's a better option to do something, people will just continue doing what they're doing because that's what they have been doing. Simple, stupid as it sounds, that's what people are going to do, right? That's why there is opt out for 401ks here in the United States, because they know if they do opt out, more people will join it, right? What does that more people do? It puts more money into Wall Street's hands, and then who gets paid? Wall Street gets paid, right? Taking money out of your hands, right? That's why I don't have a 401k. It's a silly thing. Concentrated liquidity is still diluted your share of trades, in my opinion. I don't know exactly what you mean by that. The 5 eyes controlling validators will definitely fuck people and the network if they can or extend the operations. I completely agree. But let's get back into this video here. He had mentioned OTX. I'm sorry. I think it was OTXO, I think it was, which if I'm looking this up right now, it's unspent transaction output is what that stands for. Unspent transaction output. I just wanted to define that before we finish this video.
Back to you. Those change outputs can be traced in future transactions. So someone would at least know that you were part of this CoinJoin. Also, the more the merrier. The more people that participate in a CoinJoin transaction, the greater the size of what is called the anonymity set. And so if you have 3 users doing a CoinJoin, it's less secure and less privacy preserving than 10 users doing a coin join, because it simply obscures the addresses more and more and makes the chain analysis harder to do. Now, a final very important point that I want to make about coin joins is coin join itself is a pretty broad sort of algorithm. And the one very important problem that coin join does not solve is how to actually find other users on the Bitcoin network to do these coin joins with. That's up to the individual implementation of a coin join style algorithm. So let's talk about some implementations then. Well, the first sort of implementation that came about on the Bitcoin network is not a very good one, and that is centralized mixing services. There are many problems with using a centralized, trusted mixing service to try and preserve your privacy. The first is many of these were simply scams and would steal users' coins outright. And the second is when you have a centralized mixing service, it's possible for chain analysis to be done to at least see which outputs are created by the mixer, and those coins are often blacklisted by exchanges and other services that users might want to use. So centralized mixers are a bad idea. Don't use them. Now, there are several decentralized and trustless implementations of coin joins that are much better that have been developed. And it largely depends on what network you wish to transact on as to which coin.
I think that is enough for this guy in here, but basically, because I think he's going to get into some older technology that's not necessarily relevant to today and how we move forward. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I think privacy is super, 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 super duper important, and we will see it at some point going into the future. But for the future for us, I think we should get into how to value an HSI. If you go over to OpenSea, you have this is the NFT, right? It says encapsulated by Hedron, and it says hex stake, and has this cool fucking thing here, right? This is a hex stake, 1 T share served for 3 days, 5555, right? Has served, and it is currently selling for, it's probably hard for you guys to see, but it says $1,300, $1,297.04. So is this a good deal, right? Does it make sense to purchase this, right? Does it make any sense to buy these from here? So I wanted to put together a little bit of framework on how we could actually take a look at these things to see if it makes any sense to buy these, right? Does it make any sense to purchase these OpenSea NFTs, or should we just go to the market and buy it ourselves? So I put together this spreadsheet, right? Now, the data from here is either coming from the market or it's coming from the OpenSea listing for these, right? So we're going to run through this example here. Hacks, in order to create a 1 T share, costs 7,777 hacks. Right, that's from the OpenSea details. There is in the past 3 days they've minted this much Hedron. It was for 1 T share. You get how many hex per day? Approximately 6, right, for a T share. How many days is the contract? 5,555 days. So we're going to calculate the future value. What is the value of this in the future that we're going to earn from this NFT? What's the future value we're going to get on here? I see 777. Yes. Okay. So we would get 33,330. What does this mean? This is the number of days in the contract, 5,000, right? The number of hex per day, right, times the T share rate. So if this was a 0.5 T share, right, if it was half of a T share, then the rate changes right here, right? Keep an eye on this right here. If this is 2 T shares, right, this is changed to 66,000. That's all this is. Now, this is the hex price per share this morning. It's about 4 cents, right? The price for Hedron, 5 zeros and a 4, basically. So now we can do the same calculation for Hedron as we just did for hex. And if we look at this, we see that there's Well, let's first of all give the fundamental understanding to give context. Hedron, how much Hedron do you get for a 1 T share? Well, there's 1,000 B shares per T share, right? So a T share is a trillion shares, right? Versus B share is a billion shares. So there's 1,000 there. For every 1 B share, you get 1,000. For every T share, you get 1,000 B shares. For every 1 B share, you get 1 Hedron, right? So when you do the math on this, this is the length, right, times the share price of Hedron times 1,000, right? Because it's 1 T share equals 1,000, right? So that means that the future value given today's prices for Hedron is $22, right? $22. The future value of the USD for Hex is the 7,777 Hex that we used to create the T share, plus all the future earnings of Hex, 33,330, times the share price. And that's what this formula is here. So that's 1,644 plus $22 for Hedron. That means the future value of this is $1,666. And you're like, cool. The OpenSea listing said it was $1,300 or less, right? So then you might get thought, you go through this and you're like, oh, this is a discount. So if there's a bonus, this one did not have a bonus, but if there is a bonus, then you multiply that in there, right? So if there's a 4x bonus, then it would be 4x. It would be basically 5x, right? Because if you look at the Hedron website, you get the original plus 4 additional, so there's a total of 5 on that kind of thing. But this specific NFT did not have that. So you're like, okay, it's selling for this on OpenSea, and this is the future value of it. That makes sense, right? You're like, I get a $300 discount on this, but we think more about it, so we don't actually it doesn't actually do that. This is how much it would actually cost us. 7,777 Hex times the current share price is $311. OpenSea fee, if we're factoring this into this is 2.5% for OpenSea, so that's $8 here, plus ETH fee, say they're $5. So that means to create a 1 T share position, it is effectively the same thing as this, is $323. And it would actually be less than this because you're not paying that, right? Like you could call this, ETH fees to set up the position, right? To set up a Hex stake, or you could call this, Hex stake or something like that, and this be $10 or something, right? So it's about the same price, but $325. Well, what's the price they're selling this same exact thing for? $1,300. You're not stupid. Like, that's not a good deal. So when you look at OpenSea and you look through what all of those NFTs are selling for, I haven't looked through all of them, but there's a lot of them that are just massively overpriced. So does it make sense to buy them? Well, the area where I think it could make sense to buy these NFTs, these HSIs, as an NFT. Well, when there's volatility in the market, if you define volatility as the price fluctuation up and down of an asset, then when you have extreme volatility, say for here, we have price run up in a very short period of time, say Hex goes to 12 cents, right? $12, 12 cents. Say 12 cents here, right? Well, it still doesn't make sense there. Say if it was 20 cents, right? There we go. Okay. So say Hex runs up right here to 20 cents. And the price in OpenSea has not updated, right? Because I think you have to manually update this on OpenSea because you can choose the price. Now, if Hex jumps up to 20 cents in a short period of time and the person's on vacation who listed the NFT, then the numbers change, right? They are selling a 1 T share that's going to cost $1,300. If you want to create the same position in today, as in the price of this was 20 cents, then that means it would cost you $1,500, $1,600. So cost $1,600 or cost $1,300 for the, which one's cheaper? This is cheaper. That means the purchasing on the NFT would make sense in that case. I don't think that's going to happen super often. Yeah, if it's $12, it definitely makes sense to do that if they're only selling it for $1,300. But I don't think that type of thing is going to happen all the time. But it will probably happen sometimes for the people who are paying attention. They can pick up, portions of or T shares through the NFTs. Maybe the pricing differential is going to be more apparent as more users come on, as adoption increases. Maybe something changes in that realm and it becomes more advantageous to do the NFT route. But when you look at selling your HSI as an NFT, or you look at selling your HSI to the ICOSA, or you look at just taking an advance on your HSI, there is going to be 3 separate values that come up, right? And when you look at those values, people are going to migrate to the one that is the best, right? So if Hedron USD value is above the equivalent of where ICOSA is, right? Because you take a 1T share ICOSA, you sell it through the contract, you mint a certain amount of ICOSA sells for XYZ in the marketplace. That means, say, on $1,000 hex stake, you get $150, right? So you're like, okay, $1,000, $850, cool, boom, that's good. Now, if Hedron, I think this is the better way of saying it, is when Hedron gives you a higher dollar amount than what you get through ICOSA, meaning you have an HSI that is $1,000, right? You want to liquidate this, so you take an advance on that, and remember, this is only going to happen to longer stakes. That's why I don't personally think it makes a ton of sense to do short-term stakes. There's 67 people here listening. Do you think it makes any sense to do a short-term stake with the options that are available? It doesn't make sense to do it. But in this example that I'm talking about, the advanceable Hedron is only going to be more valuable than the ICOSA if there's something fucked up for ICOSA, as in a bunch of people are earning a bunch of ICOSA that is going to forever, increase its supply. Right? People are going to earn a shitload of it and sell it off. Is it going to retain any sort of value? I don't know. Maybe you only get $500 for $1,000 ICOSA. I don't know. We'll have to see how this plays out. This is correct. AJ and UFO, this is only going to be prevalent or relevant for 5555 stakes. But at that point, it doesn't make any sense. I don't think it really makes a lot of sense to do short-term staking. It doesn't make sense. Why? Please, and I'm happy to learn. If you guys think that there's a different reason, does it make any sense to do a short-term stake? Bob, I've never understood less than 555 HSI, but that's just me. Okay, cool. Morning, Chris. I don't understand a short-term stake either, right? Especially with an HSI. You can liquidate your position. Why not just earn a higher amount on it? I don't see any point in it either. I think that the average stake length is just going to continue to accelerate, because as more and more people realize this, it just doesn't make sense to not stake 5555. You can get liquidation. You can liquidate your position at any point you want to. It doesn't make sense to not to, especially with 20% burn bonus for your 555. Chase, awesome. Yes, you're 100% correct. Right? Why do it for less than that? I haven't created a native stake since Hedron launch. I don't see a point in using hex.com. You guys disagree? Why would you lock up your shit on a wallet that can never be transferred, and you can't get liquidated? You can't get any cash out if you even need to, right? In the first basically half of it. of your stake length, especially if you're doing 15 years. That's 7.5 years. I think that go.hex.com is just going to be like, an antique. Like, why would people use that? Unless somebody has butterfingers or something like that. And they just, need to lock it up from themselves because they don't know how to, put something away or put something in a safe and just not touch it. When you create an HSI, you're planning to buy it back. You could. So that's the other option. Remember that we got those 3 options. Sell as an NFT on OpenSea, sell it as through ICOSA contract, or take an advance on your ICOSA. Well, you can see what one of those is going to be the highest price and just do whatever option is the highest price. Now, if you use Hedron Advance, you have the risk of debt on there that fluctuates in value. It's like variable debt, which it's not a good thing in my opinion, but you do have that optionality, right? Think about this. If you go to OpenSea and you sell your NFT, which is an HSI, to get cash out, what does that do? Well, that's final. You don't have that HSI anymore. It's gone, period. That's what you wanted to liquidate, right? Let's look at ICOSA. ICOSA is going to give you some dollar amount. And what happens after ICOSA, after you sell your HSI to the ICOSA contract? Again, it's final. It's over with. It's done. What happens if you take an advance on your HSI using Hedron? You still retain control of that HSI for 90 days. So that means if in the next 90 days, after you did this, say, for example, you had $1,000 HSI and that gave you a Hedron dollar value, your advance on that was $600, right? And you're like, okay, cool. That's enough for me to do this. And then during that next 90 days, what if Hedron price dropped in such a manner that it was only $300 worth of Hedron to pay off your debt, right? So you borrow $600 worth in terms of USD. You borrow, say, $3 million worth of Hedron, which equates to $600. Now, at some point between time 0, when you do this, in time 90, when you have to pay this back, you basically can get a free loan. But what if the price drops in Hedron drastically, right? And remember, this is crypto, shit's fucking volatile. So if that price drops by 50%, then that means you could pay off your debt, which was $600 at time 0, and now it's only worth $300. If you could pay that shit off with $300. Now the same thing works in reverse. Hedron could go a double in value, but you're like, okay, cool. I already took out my value anyway, right? And that means it would go from, say, $600 to $1,200 to pay that back, right? On $1,000 hex stake, that's not going to make terrible ton of sense to do it. You might as well let it go to the liquidation market, right? Let's check back at the comments here. Thank you for the comment there, Antes Del Sol. Appreciate you. UFO. Sam, any chance you can show a real-time HSI swap for Hedron with prices or Hedron return without fixing yourself, Nate? Possibly in a future video. I'd have to set something up on this computer because I don't use this one for crypto. But possibly in the future. Alex is very talented and the audits agree, but no piece of software is proven secure except by TLV over time. Cool. Yes, the time is the ultimate test of security, right? You're like audits or this, that, and the other thing. Time, right? Time is the ultimate test there. I think that Bob has a very good point there. You don't need the NFT anymore with ICOSA. Cool, unless ICOSA gives you $800 worth of value and the NFT gives you $950 worth of value. Then I would do that in NFT. Right, but it is more complex to do that. So, Luna, the average retail user and OpenSea has no idea what an HSI is. 1,000% correct. The only people who are going to know what HSIs are on OpenSea is you guys and myself, right? And some people in this community. Bob, it's a very low percentage risk in my opinion, but and HSI has additional software risk that Hex native has already been battle tested through those successfully. I agree. I agree. If you think that what Bob is saying right here, in my opinion, is that would be the reason to use go.hex.com, is because it is more tested. It is less flexible, which means less code risk or like smart contract risk, right? Like, I completely agree with that 1,000%. That didn't make sense. I didn't make sense. Let me elaborate more. You can, please, JJ. You can short Hedron by swapping an HSI. Yep, 100% correct. Yes, that is what you could effectively do, which would be interesting. I want to talk about this a tiny bit more. Good morning, RH. If you were to go through and use HSIs as collateral, and I'm not saying anybody should do this, right? This is a very risky strategy, but you can do it. You could use HSIs as collateral. So say if you had collateral that was $1,000, it's not going to make sense at $1,000 unless you're just playing the market. But if you really want to manipulate the market and you have the capacity to do so with a large amount and or the media narrative, right? You could use HSIs to borrow Hedron by taking advances on those. That is effectively a short position on Hedron. Then you could take all that Hedron and you could try to manipulate the market to drive the price down, either by changing the narrative and or just continuous selling of all the advanced Hedron you just got. I do think that is definitely a possibility. UFO, I don't think a lot of people in the community understand how to short things, or I don't think a lot of people in this community will short things, just because it takes a much deeper understanding of finance and shorting and the risks involved, and I don't think a lot of people will end up doing that, but it is 100% possible, and I love that is possible. Not that I would do it, but it is fucking awesome. You don't have to sell HSI on open market, OpenSea anymore, correct? What about HMAX? SEC saying all crypto should be security talks BS, or security talks BS. How is that going to happen, right? I don't see that as like a real thing that will actually take place. The SEC wants crypto to be security. Why? Because then I get to regulate it, right? If I have control over something, then that is beneficial to me, right? Because I have control over it, right? Like if you guys want to sign your houses over to my LLC and then I can control your house, like, right, I'll still let you live there for free, right? You just got to pay all the bills, right? But I control that through the regulation of your house, because now I have, basically, this is like obviously an example related to the SEC, but they just want to expand their power. They don't want to actually fucking protect people. They work for Wall Street. They don't give a fuck about you or me at all. You know how much insider trading happens, and if you're in the United States, your government is just scum. And like they get fucking Nancy, like whatever her fucking name is, Pelosi. Great show. Thank you. I appreciate support, Human Tax Officer. Unsuitable. How does selling an HSI to ICOSA work? As in, how much value does one get? Good question. So the first part is what you need to. First part is you have to convert your HSI to an NFT, which is done through Hedron.pro. Then you take that over to the ICOSA.pro, I think it is. I think it's ICOSA.pro, and you can get the value there. It fluctuates based upon how much Hedron is burnt. So depending on how much Hedron is burnt, that will give you the amount of ICOSA that you're going to be able to mint, and then you can compare that with what is available in the marketplace, right? And then you could go check and see there are people buying NFTs on OpenSea. So then you can go see, hey, how much do I think I could honestly get if I listed this on OpenSea? And you could compare those two numbers. And then you could also compare them with the advanceable amount of Hedron given your NFT or whatever. Maybe we could run through an example of actually doing that at some point. Very fulfilling group chat tonight, Sam. Many thanks and applause. Hey, I appreciate you. Appreciate you. It sounds like you're in Australia. What's up? It's morning over here. Gary Gensler is overreaching. I don't know who Gary Gensler is. That a regulator? They do not care about you. I agree. I think that is a regulator, and they don't care about you. They care about their friends and themselves. They want to fill their bags in crypto as security is the ticket through the door. You are a smart person. Digital farm. I think you're a man, but you're a smart man. I agree. This is this BS in 2017. Yes, I completely agree. It's app.icosa.pro. Thank you, AJ. Appreciate that. Thank you. So it's not icosa.pro. It is that you can get to the app there, but the actual app, the DApp is app.icosa.pro. AJ listed it here. Thank you, sir. Antes del Sol. If you buy back the HSI after it goes to liquidation, can you sell it to a COSA again? Could this be a loop? Antes del Sol. Yes, you can do that. So think about this, guys. You have, I don't know what the number is. Somebody shared something with me the other day, which I wish I'd saved. I think it was HSI Watch, where you get to go through and see the number of T shares that have been sold to the ICOSA contract and the number of HSIs that have been sold there. Now, all of those can be purchased in the liquidation market and then resold back to ICOSA, right? This is why I'm not as bullish on ICOSA, because what is the demand for ICOSA? Demand for ICOSA is the yield, right? So if you can earn a yield, but if you have the inflation rate of ICOSA, you would think could go down over time, right? That would be the idea, that ICOSA is going to go down, because if you figure the lowest amount of burn of Hedron is right now. In the future, you're going to have additional Hedron which is burnt, which means the rate at which you're going to earn ICOSA goes down, meaning the inflation rate is going to go down on an individual basis. But when you put it in a much more macro sense and you consider users and adoption, what Hex, if you look on Etherscan, has like 311,000 holders. Do you think that Hex has the capacity to get to 4x that number at 1.2 million? Right. Well, at 1.2 million, do you think that the usage of ICOSA is going, because there's so many new users, that the number of people who are minting ICOSA actually increases the inflation rate? I see that happening, right? Even if people continue to use ICOSA and the burn rate in Hedron continues to go up, I think it's still possible. Now, I don't necessarily see that case with Hedron. This is why I'm far more bullish on Hedron than I am ICOSA. If you look at ICOSA versus Hedron, with the inflation we were just talking about, Hedron doesn't have that. So with Hedron, you have the rate of inflation is going to be tied to the B share, right? So the rate of inflation tied to the B share, we know that's programmatically going to go up, right? So that's for sure going to go up, which means that the inflation is for sure going to go down. If you believe the estimates that the T shares, the quantity of T shares goes down over time, right? And if you look at like people who put out fucking estimates on this shit, they believe that the number of T shares is going to go down over time. So if you believe or value what these people say, and you think that the number of T shares goes down over time, then that means the number of, even if new users come in, right? Because that's where they're created. So even if new users come in, because they're getting more and more expenses over time, the number of them decreases, right? Where we could have a different issue with ICOSA, right? If the number of users has a 10x, right, then the more people are going to be selling HSIs, then could be offset by the burn of Hedron, right? So we could have a increase in the inflation rate of ICOSA as more users come in potentially. Haven't run the numbers, right? But we're just talking about this out loud. Where Hedron, the number you're like the inflation rate is for sure going to be going down as time goes on. Plus, you can't burn ICOSA. ICOSA is locked up into a smart contract for people who stake it, right? But why are people going to sell their HSIs, right? They're either going to sell their HSIs because they need liquidity, right? They want cash, or they want to put it into this contract because they think the ICOSA contract is going to earn more money than the Hex contract, right? So you can't burn ICOSA. Where at Hedron, if you have a lower market price below where like the fair value is, we've touched on this in several other videos, but below that price, there's a massive increase in the amount of Hedron that's actually burnt. And then you also have Hedron that is locked up in the ICOSA contract. AJ, I think you've been paying close attention to this, or somebody else in the chat here. The NFT portion of ICOSA, I did not participate in that, but the NFT portion of ICOSA, please somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you earn ICOSA and I think you earn some Hedron. If that is correct, let me know in the comments. So when you think about Hedron, right, you got a massive amount of burning supply, and then ICOSA sucks a lot more of that supply into that contract, right? So you have Hedron staking over there, and then you also have the rewards. Yes, the Watsa digital farm is the Watsa rewards ICOSA and Hedron, right? So the rewards for the ICOSA are ICOSA and Hedron, right? So you can get more, that takes more off the market, right, in there. And these are going to be locked up for a certain period of time. And then you have the massive amount of burning that's happening. So ICOSA will increase in supply for fucking sure. Hex is definitely going to be Hex is definitely increasing in supply. Hedron has the possibility that could be deflationary, especially if we get some swings where when there's liquidations happening, the price of Hedron drops drastically, meaning you need more Hedron to pay for an HSI stake, right? If you have something that's worth $1 and there's $1,000 Hex stake that comes up, then you need 1,000 of those things to pay for that $1,000 thing. Now, if you have something that is 1 penny, right, that for that same $1,000 Hex stake, you need 100x times that in terms of the number of tokens. Right? So the perfect scenario is when you have Hedron tank, right, in terms of USD value, tank on the liquidation. If we have this would be like glorious. This is what I would love. If on November 13th, 14th, 15th, etc., when all these ICOSA contracts are coming up to market for people to purchase, these HSIs, during that time, if we have a massive sell-off in Hedron price, then what does that mean? That means you need a boatload more Hedron to be able to pay for those, which means decreasing the supply because that shit is getting burnt, period, right? So I'm curious to see how this actually plays out. AJ has sold most of my HSI for ICOSA and staked all of them to earn HSI, Hedron, ICOSA. Awesome. You actually earn a higher amount of Hedron through the ICOSA pool than you do through Hex, I believe. FYI, Richard live in spaces. I think Bullish has pulled that up as well. Unsuitable, what happens during the NFTing process or tokenization of an HSI? Thought making an HSI was essentially making an Hex stake NFT. Yes. So it's just, I haven't personally done this, but it's through Hedron.po app, right? Usually you're going to go through the app with that, and then you tokenize it through there. I'm sure that somebody who's gone through the process 17,000 times has a YouTube video that will be more informative or give you more value in that. So I would probably just YouTube that, just because I'm not sure, but it's going to be through Hedron.pro. You are tokenizing an HSI stake, then selling it to the So AJ mentions this unsuitable. You're doing through ICOSA. You're doing Hedron.pro, and then when it's done there, then you take that NFT to ICOSA to actually sell it through there. November is not far away. This is exciting time. UFO to go. Sam, what is the downside to wrapping all your liquid hacks into a 15-year HSI, then borrowing all the Hedron tomorrow? Assume I let the HSI get liquidated and keep the Hedron borrowed. What's the downside of that? Let's talk about it for a second. Well, on the one hand, that's a great question. If you have, say, 10 T shares, or just say 1 T share, right? Say you have 1 T share, and that's, given current prices, about $330, and you could borrow, say, $240 worth of Hedron against that. Well, to get all that Hedron, it's going to cost you, the transaction fees, which might be thought of as a sunk cost if you already have these HSIs, but the transaction fees to set up those HSIs to start with, and the cost associated with that, as well as if it's $330 and the advanceable Hedron is 250 USD worth, then you have that cost there. Now, I personally believe, and then you're giving up that hex position where you could, if you did just hold that, you can get the Hedron anyway. It would just take 15 years to get the Hedron, right? But you're effectively giving up the hex position, where I think probably a better option, in my opinion, would be to just buy Hedron. Hedron, in my opinion, is undervalued. I think there's still an opportunity, especially with this sell-off recently, for more than a 10x. Like, I've removed a lot of LP liquidity providing from Uniswap to just purchase Hedron, because I think that is massively undervalued, especially when you have, like, if Hex has given that Hedron's already 10x below where, like, the fair value could be, because we're in this game right now where we're in a bear market. There's a lot of people who don't know about ICOSA yet. Like, people here in the chat clearly do, but there's a lot of people who don't even, in the Hex community, who never heard of ICOSA, right? So that's going to continue to expand, right? There's people in that community who don't even know what Hedron is, right? So that's going to go through and continue to expand as well as time goes on. And the price of Hedron given today, people are not factoring in my opinion, the appropriate amount of Hedron that's going to be burnt in November. Because once people see how much Hedron is actually burnt, right, and how much, because what happened to the pool? Somebody probably knows this. I don't know if this is accurate, but I have the ICOSA, app.icosa.pro thing pulled up over here, and it says that there is 16 billion Hedron. Is that right? 16. No, this is not right. 1 point. I think it's a trillion something. I don't know. Somebody who knows where to fucking find this data can find it faster than I can. There is a boatload of Hedron that is staked in ICOSA. That is going to be staked longer than the liquidations, meaning you have this event that's taking place throughout, like, the middle of November, where people are going to, more than likely, people are going to desire. I'm not going to be buying any of them, right? I don't give a shit to buy these T-shares personally, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't, right? I'm going going to be holding on to my Hedron because I think it's undervalued relative to the T-share. And so there's going to be a bunch of people who go out there and purchase these T-shares. But the thing that they use to purchase these T-shares, first of all, a boatload of it's locked up in ICOSA. And then, as this takes place, a shitload, as a technical term there for a lot, of Hedron is going to be burnt and taken out of supply, right? And I don't believe this is being factored in at all to the current price. I think there's at least a 10. I ran the numbers there in a spreadsheet to basically make it so that there's an arb point. If Hedron goes above it, there's an arbitrage point. AJ, actually, Sam, Maxim did a video yesterday about the Godwell staking Hedron, making the ICOSA contract more exciting or less exciting because the yield goes down. I'm not sure. Yes, downside you lose your hex. That was the effective, like, very essence of it, is that you lose the hex on there. But I think Hedron has, like, you know, if hex has a double, given where Hedron prices, Hedron is going to have way more of an effect in terms of upside, right? I want X's. That's why I'm not buying T-shares, because I think I can get way higher X's with Hedron than I can with buying the T-share. You're better off doing buyback with ICOSA and stake if you're long-term thinking. Got you a separate process. Sounds like an unnecessary step. However, I watched a stream with Alex where he was explaining why Hedron and ICOSA was released at different times. I think he put together that story afterwards personally to make it sound better personally, because otherwise, if you actually didn't want to distribute to all the current whales, then you wouldn't have set up the distribution to distribute to all the whales, right? If you give it 10x to everybody who has T-shares, who's getting all those? All the fucking whales and hacks. So the story that Alex has today, I'm sure was different 7-12 months ago. Like, don't doubt that he changed his story, which is not a bad thing. I don't believe that was the story the whole time. I've swapped half of my liquid hex direct to Hedron, and now leaning towards swapping the rest. Thoughts on NFA, of course. Not financial advice. I have the most amount of Hedron in my entire bag, period. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. If that answers your question, I'm not saying anybody else should do any of the things that I do. I think that there's just way too much of an opportunity, right? Like, I saw the opportunity with Maxi, but I had some things going on and I didn't take advantage of it, right? At one point, I went through the numbers. I was like, we did a video on it. You can check my channel. Maxi's selling 1-for-1, or sometimes even less than 1-for-1 at launch, meaning you took one hex and you minted one Maxi. And yet you get the 4x Hedron bonus, you get 15-year staking, you get bigger pays better, you get longer pays better bonuses, and you get liquidity premium, meaning you can trade your hex stake. And I'm like, there is no world where the Maxi contract should be selling 1-for-1 for hex, right? But I didn't do anything about it. And I had friends that did, because they listened to what I was telling them. And I'm not saying you guys should do this by any stretch of the imagination. I'm talking about this from my own perspective, understanding of my own development as I go through this, right? But you have that take place, and I saw people making gains by doing this. They just swapped their hex for Maxi, and then you can get about 80% increase, right? And where hex has just done diddly squat, right? Now I see the same thing that happens with Hedron. So I'm like, okay, I understand what's happening with Hedron. I'm going to hold a lot more Hedron, and I will play this out, and I will see, because I've seen this play out before. I did this with fucking, what's it called? Tesla. I had friends, like, because I was talking about Tesla for 10 fucking years before anybody else did, right? Or even slightly understand it. I've done an article on Seeking Alpha from 2013, I think it is, or my first YouTube videos back from 2014 are on Tesla. I knew about it, but I didn't fucking put money into it. So I was like, I'm going to put money into this shit and watch how this plays out over time, because this is fascinating shit. Now, I have to jump out on another call in a second. So I wanted to just say thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. Awesome show. I love the interaction and the comments and all that kind of stuff. This is awesome. Perfect timing with the merge. Government is coming. Yes, everybody's going to get free tokens with the proof of work Ethereum, right? You get a copy of everything in advance. So I'll be probably covering that in more detail as I learn more about that. But I'm going to take us out of here with some DeFi proof, and we will see you tomorrow morning, which has some awesome stuff for tomorrow as well. So talk to you soon. Peace.
Farming with my stables in the decks. I'm holding IRA and it reflects. I'm sticking all this shit on Everest. And I'm balling ETF. Farming with my stables in the decks. I'm holding IRA and it reflects. I'm sticking all this shit on Everest. You see, the problem was these epochs. Now I'm printing daily, man, who need that? I check my APR on VFAT. And the regulation printing big stacks. I simple swapped it for some BNB. Took my